Mills Kelly from GMU's History Department. Mills, feel free.
Well, thank you. I don't know so much about distinguished, but so first of all, I just want to really compliment you on the work. I think you really did a marvelous job. I'm very impressed by the thinking. I mean, obviously you did a lot of research, but also there's a lot of thinking that happened, and it's really evident in the work itself. And so I think you should feel really good about that. So I had just a couple of questions. One that was, and these are all in a way, I think I told you in email, sort of targeted at sort of thinking through what happens to the dissertation now, as opposed to whether it's passable or not. It wasn't as clear to me as I might have liked the degree to which attitudes about religion played a role in the way that these narratives were constructed, because so much of the media that was pervaded during the wars was about othering people through their religious affiliation. So the Croats were not even so much Croats as they were Catholics, and the Serbs were Orthodox, and it was very easy to other the Muslims as complete outsiders. Can you talk just a little bit more about whether students even mention that, whether religion even comes up in the conversations that you had in the interviews, or is that sort of faded away?
Well, in the interview conversation that I had with students, religion really did not come up, but because I think it's more, in Croatia, it's more about ethnicity. So identity marker that is really important for students and communities in general is ethnicity.
Yeah, but how do they designate that ethnicity other than the way they pronounce "sto" or whatever? So how do they know that person is a Serb?
Well, it's a language. There are certain dialectic differences, there is religious difference. But
because the religious difference used to be, I mean, in 1992, that was the way that ethnic difference was delineated, was they're Orthodox or they're Catholic, and so it sounds from what you're saying that part of the discourse has faded away.
It definitely did not occur. The religious part did not occur in
because I think that would be, as you're thinking forward about this as a book, to go back and look at some of the media from Croatian media, Serbian media from 1991, 1992, and look at the way that the other was described, and so often they're described as those Catholics or those Orthodox or those Muslims, and so I think there's something really interesting in there that thing which was a really key part of the discourse of otherness during the fighting has just evaporated from the conversation. And so why would that be? And the why is the interesting piece.
That's a very interesting question. I never really thought about it, that it evaporated, but I still think that it's about ethnicities and rather than religion. I mean, religion was part of it, but it was all about who are the Croats, who are the Serbs and Muslims.
And the Muslims were a little easier to other because their cultural differences were a little starker in terms of perhaps dietary practices, or other things. But if you set aside religion, but one of the primary ways of defining the ethnicity in 1990 or 1991 was religion.
Yes.
And now, if that point of definition has gone, then how is it that they know that you're a Serb or you're a Croat, and other than listening to you speak? And so, because listening to you speak, then they know right away, perhaps. But before that, or the spelling of your last name will be an indicator. But that's not ethnicity; that's spelling.
Yeah.
And so
language really.
Yeah, language
is really was
so
really
maybe language
important.
is all that's left.
Yes, and that's why the parents and teachers are suggesting that really, the language, the children should learn how the language should not be seen as a threat, because it's seen in a way as a threat, and people really need to be careful, which words they are using in certain environments. I think the language is now the key thing rather than religious.
I was struck as I was reading the dissertation that religion just doesn't really come up, and so it's as a historian, I'm always interested in the things which vanish, and so here's a thing that's vanished, and a thing which was vitally important in 1991 or 1992 and now it's just gone. And
That's a good point.
And so there's something in there that's worth thinking about. You know, and perhaps when you're back in the region, ask a few people. You know, go back to some of your interviewees and say, you know, I was thinking back about this, and I wonder, you know, you never mentioned religion. Why was that? You know, do you care? I mean, so so that's one thing just to sort of think about going forward. The other thing I'd be very interested in hearing you respond to is whether you talked at all with teachers or students or parents about tertiary educational opportunities, so after school activities. Because across the Balkans now, and as you know, I'm in a foundation in Romania, and that does a lot of funding of this. Lots of things like junior achievement and impact program, and you know, things that bring students together in after-school activities, leadership programs, development of ecological activities, things which are educational but not formal schooling. Is there any of that in Eastern Slavonia?
There are some projects, and I actually accessed my student participants through NGO called Proni, and they are doing projects and programs with youth of different ethnicities. So they do have, and they engage with certain students. But I think that this is only a minority of students that really want to work with these organizations. What's worrying is that in segregated model, for example, students said that they are not interested in extracurricular activities with the members of the other ethnic group. So that was in segregated model.
Yeah, and that's really why I was interested in this, because I could imagine, you know, again, thinking about the implications of your work for practice going forward. It should be instructive to NGOs working in the region that developing the kinds of after-school activities that would be attractive to students in the segregated model, those that lead to employment or lead to admission to the university or lead to some result that's seen as favorable. Then okay, I don't really want to hang out with Serbs, or Croats, but if it's going to get me a job, okay, maybe I'll try it. And so much of this work is about what you've emphasized, which is collaborative learning and team building activities, and so it has that opportunity. But I think your work can be really instructive to NGOs in the region as to how high the bar is for participation, how difficult it will be.
One of the key themes that emerged from students' data, especially in their responses, is this lack of economic opportunities and this economic uncertainty and lack of employment. So this is one of the for both ethnicities, and I don't see that there are many programs that are helping these young people to succeed.
So we've done a lot of work in the rural areas of Romania, which are some of the poorest in the Balkans, and it's the same exact problem. But the young people are finding through programs like Junior Achievement that then they can access microfinance opportunities. If they learn how to start a company and that does something really simple, and then they learn how to access microfinance, and then when they actually have 500 euros, well, 500 euros for a group of 17 or 18-year-olds is a lot to start with.
Of money, yes.
So that's another sort of implication of the work that I think NGOs would be interested in. So now I want to ask you a slightly more challenging question, and that is, as I was reading your dissertation and listening to you speak again, about the fact that the students' learning takes place on the internet, not through their textbooks. It seems to me that maybe we've reached the point where studying textbooks, history textbooks, is no longer interesting. It's for what you are interested in, because you're interested in the students. So if we're interested in how young people learn about the past, looking at textbooks is no longer relevant, maybe. But and this is what I'd ask you to respond to. If we're interested in how the state attempts to create historical narratives, or how parents attempt to influence historical narratives, because in various places parents have more or less input into what's in the history textbooks, then textbooks are very interesting. But if students don't read them, and I can tell you that George Mason University students don't read them. College students, it's not just unique to George Mason. The bookstore will tell you that students don't even buy them. And I have 2 teenage children, and their history textbooks are used to prop their laptop screens up a little bit higher. They never open them, and they're typical. And so if that's the case, do you think it's time for us to, when we're focused on students, do you think it's time for us to shift our emphasis away from studying textbooks as having any relevance or any significant relevance, and studying instead the sort of the creation of historical narratives in an internet space instead?
I really think that it's going in that direction, that students are, it's so much easier for them to go on the internet and get this information. It's so quick, it's one click away from the information. But then again, internet is a little bit problematic because, if they get information from Wikipedia, these are unchecked sources.
But if that's where they're getting it, then that's what we have to study.
Definitely, yes. Probably books are, hard copy books are becoming a little bit obsolete. So I guess, introduction of books, Kindle version or e-books or something like that might be more appealing to students. But no, you don't think so?
Not in my experience. Instead, it's because all that does is take a book and sort of cram it into the screen, and it's not really designed for that. And what students are much more interested in is that interactive, quick chunking of information.
What I found is that wherever they hear an information about recent history, about the history that they're for their projects in school or whatever, what's important for students is actually to talk about it and to interact with their peers and with their parents or with their other members of community to really reaffirm the content of these these narratives that they obtained from these sources. So I would say that there is a difference between sources of historical knowledge and mediators, interaction, and I believe that learning takes place through interaction more than just reading something.
Yeah, so I think it sounds like we're in agreement that if we're going to study how students learn about the past, textbooks are not so interesting. If we're going to study the interactive process through which they learn about the past, then textbooks are interesting because this is about the state attempting to create narratives, and perhaps the parents actually read the textbooks or thought about them, and so the textbooks are part of the story, but if we're only studying the students, it's perhaps not so interesting anymore.
Yeah, and I think that there are that's why I'm using this dynamical systems theory approach, because I like to look at different aspects, different sources of knowledge, different mediators, and how all of them influence each other. So I think that's useful rather than focusing either on textbooks or internet or separately. So I was trying to get a comprehensive picture of how this learning really takes place. And what I saw that there is a certain disconnect between these top-down approaches of learning history, through certain programs, curricula, and textbooks, with what students actually know and express about history, about recent history.
And I think that's one of the important results of your work is that there is this disconnect, and so we can't assume that because the textbook says X that students learn X. That there is in fact a disconnect between the textbook and the learning, and especially because increasingly students simply don't read the textbook.
And also because students don't agree, with the narrative in the textbooks. So especially.
And one of the great things about the internet is if you keep looking, eventually you find a narrative that you agree with.
It's kind of dangerous.
This is one of the downsides, and so this then speaks to teaching students the skills of critical analysis of web sources, as opposed to critical analysis of what they find in the textbook. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mills, for an excellent array of questions, and Borislava for equally answering the questions in an excellent manner. Professor Korostelina.
Yes, hi. Interestingly, it's first of all, I really want to say that Borislava done wonderful work. It's really very profound study of perceptions, not only teachers but also students and parents. She really provides some systemic views on different cross-sectional groups, including Serbs and Croats, including segregated, desegregated schools. And I have some interesting I have some questions regarding actually teachers, because we know that in multicultural societies, political national identity rests on alternative means of national solidarity. So history teachers can have different levels of agreement and engagement with specific national narratives. But narratives they employ in class should reflect one of available competing narratives. Did you find that teachers in class employed some popular national narratives in society, or at least something close to these popular national narratives, or you found more diversity among school teachers?
Well, definitely. Thank you, Karina. Definitely, teachers play a very important role in mediating historical meanings to students, and one proof of that is that, for example, in segregated schools, you have the same textbooks and the same curricula, but you have, in Serbian classes, you have Serbian teachers teaching, these classes, and Croat teacher teaching Croatian classes. So the teacher role becomes very important. What I discovered is that teachers are usually of both ethnicities are avoiding very contentious topics that are even in the textbooks. So they try to avoid, which, in my opinion, does not resolve anything. It even creates more rift among students. So I think what's missing is this interaction, this engagement, different type of engagement with students. It's not about whether a certain narrative is true or not true, or did that happen or not, but really how can we accept different narratives, and how can we accept differences among us. So that's what I discovered.
Following what you're telling, the problem that connection with particular narrative chosen by particular teacher usually give opportunity for a teacher to develop meaning of identity, maybe connection to nation, provide some temporal coherence, but it's also defined in group and out groups. It usually provides legitimacy for particular in group and out groups, and develop boundaries. And if narratives reinforce in-group solidarity, they also emphasize perceptions of intergroup differences. It produces some negativities toward members of out-groups within a nation. So some out-groups can be perceived as a threatening competitors to nation building, or maybe even fifth column, which seeks to destroy national sovereignty. And even they try to avoid some, as you told, contentious discussions. They still probably have this, maybe sometimes even unconscious idea who is on group, who is in group. What is the threat for nation building? Which particular group is competitor or threatening for nation building? At least I found it very clearly in Ukraine. Do you see how it's influenced? And of course, these negative perceptions can influence competition between groups, influence conflict within groups, but they also strengthen attitudes among students, negative attitudes maybe among students. So did you find something similar there?
I quite agree with that, especially in segregated model. They are avoiding certain contentious event, talking about contentious events, but they are definitely following the curricula and the textbooks mostly. So particularly, Croatian teachers with Croatian students, because there is this state building narrative that is in the textbooks and that the students need to know according to the curricula. So definitely yes, there is this creation, I guess, of boundaries and these separate identities among students, which is reinforced by teachers. But students do not necessarily replicate these type of narratives that they learn in school, because they also talk with their peers and parents at home. So there are different there are different aspects of these narratives that are not only taught in schools by teachers.
What I also like in your research is that you try to provide some recommendations, and I do believe that recognition of such different narratives can become foundation for a dialogue within the society. How, if we know what particular meanings of in-group, out-group relations are produced by teachers, it gives us opportunity to develop more strategic approaches to dialogue. What do you think about it?
I think that it's not only teachers that are key in this process, but other stakeholders, such as parents, such as possibly school administration, ministry officials, whatever, everybody who is included in this educational system. So I wouldn't say that it's only teachers, but I do agree with you that dialogue is necessary, whether in schools or outside schools. And as I said, it's not about looking for some kind of compromise or joint narratives, but it's really about recognizing the other, and that the other is different, and that is okay. So that's some kind of dialogic processes that I foresee would be useful, because differences between Croats and Serbs will continue. They will always be there, but students need to develop critical thinking. They need to develop this attitude towards the other, not as a threat, but as a possible peer. So that's my thought on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Borislava, building upon Mill's question about the role of religion, it occurred to me that while that may not be important in Croatia, in relations between Croat Catholics and Croat Serb Orthodox Christians, it might still be an issue in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where the Muslim element seems to be a highly combustible, incendiary buzzword for certainly Serbs, probably Croats to some extent. What do you think about that?
Well, going back at the beginnings and how the war started, definitely religion was used as one of the incentives for people, for creating this differentiation between groups.
Yeah, particularly Izetbegovich's 1975, I think, document calling for some kind of Islamic.
But this kind of nationalist. So we have this the rise of nationalist leaders, throughout the region, in former Yugoslavia. So it was Milosevic in Serbia, Tudjman in Croatia, and Izetbegovic in Bosnia. But these people really were not relevant, and their discourse was not relevant until the state started disintegrating, until state started weakening, and then they emerged to the stage, and these discourses became important. So I guess it's connected with these wider systemic changes, which unfortunately brought about nationalism to the state.
Part of your dynamical systems approach might get at that. Also, building on Mill's question and your comment that language might be more important in the Croatian context, would that include the alphabet? The Cyrillic on one side and the Roman on the other side?
You see, now it's good that you asked this question, because only recently in Croatia there were huge protests, because in Eastern Slavonia actually they wanted to introduce both Cyrillic, which is Serbian alphabet, and Croatian Latin alphabet. So they wanted signs to be in both languages, which according to the law, Serbs have the right, because they are like almost 40% of the population in Eastern Slavonia. So that caused huge protests around Croatia against that. So yeah, the language is very important marker for this differentiation, and it's also for I think for Croats particularly because in Eastern Slavonia, like atrocities and fighting, a lot of fighting between these two groups took place. So therefore they see any sign of some Serbian identity anywhere, they see it as a threat, they see it as a problem. While in old Yugoslavia, I remember we had in our textbooks we had the text in Slovenian language, text in Macedonian, poems in Macedonian. So we had to know all these different languages, and people were happy to do it. It was just a different setup,
Different framework.
different framework.
Why do you think the integrated model of education was more successful than the segregated model in encouraging the Serbian Croatian students to converge on similar themes, to agree, more so than in the segregated model? Was it the contact hypothesis and or something else?
I don't think it's only contact. I think it's the quality of engagement. So the grievances are still there, whether it's integrated or segregated model, and differences are still there. But I think that the space for the development of critical thinking among students and sort of a respect towards the other, when the other is really present with you, is really something that made a difference. So
Yeah.
I guess that is something that happened in these kind of spaces. So it's not only the contact, but it's the quality and the space that enabled critical thinking, and because of the presence of the other.
Yeah, given the way you put that, when the other is present, it's kind of hard to rant and rave about them being Satan incarnate. And I guess merely having people together, how old were they again, remind us, other students?
They were from 18 to 22.
So these are university students.
No. These were like fourth graders, high school graders. So
Oh, 8.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 18.
Oh no.
Okay, so
no. 18. From 18.
18 years of age?
Yes, they're in the fourth grade of high school. So these are 18, and those that are like recent high school graduates, like 19,
Right,
20
so
years
this
old.
is closer to the German Abitur system, where you spend longer in high school than the Americans.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah.
That may explain a lot. They may be reading more than we are here. I guess they have more of an opportunity in the integrated classes to rehumanize each other, no matter what they've heard at home, that they view each other as peers, as you said before. The differences are still there, but it's kind of hard to view them in diabolical terms. So I think there's some interesting further work there that could probably be done. To what extent, Borislava, do you think recent decisions in November 2012 by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICTY, acquitting Generals Gotovina and Markac from complicity in the commission of war crimes in Operation Storm in the summer of 1995, to what extent will that kind of undermine whatever movement toward reconciliation is taking place between Serbia and Croatia, and between Croat Catholics and Croat Serb Orthodox Christians?
Well, it's a very good question. So I talked to some of my friends in the region who are working with, as I said, processes of reconciliation and dealing with the past are dealt with by the civil society. So they are leading those processes. Now, these acquittals were definitely a big blow to to everything that these people were saying, because basically nobody was found guilty for the expulsion of 200,000 Serbs from Croatia, and for burning their homes and killing of hundreds of civilians. So that's at the end of the day, this is what this decision, the message that this decision sent to the people.
And these Croat generals were viewed as heroes by the Croats.
Yes. But and what's the problem is that the civil society was saying, well, everybody will pay for the crimes. We believe in the ICTY. This was definitely a blow to what they were saying, and they were leading these processes of reconciliation. So they just said, okay, we have to continue. The people that I spoke with, we have to continue and consider if these people are acquitted. They were generals, they were at the top. At least the state would trial those individual cases that they identified.
But they did not.
Some, yeah.
But not these two.
No, these two.
Yeah.
No. So it was a big blow to the reconciliation processes, and
that was only a year ago.
Yeah, it's perceived as an injustice, and again, Serbs are feeling victimized and not recognized,
humiliated.
So, and it's also a problem for the ICTY itself as an institution.
Yeah. They're having difficulty with their own credibility and legitimacy.
Yes.
Given that Croatia is going into the EU in 2 months' time, July, and that Serbia, because of a recent agreement between it and the Kosovar Albanians a week and a half ago on the status of Kosovo, will soon start negotiating entry into the EU, that could further enhance the spirit of reconciliation, despite these recent ICTY acquittals. And do you think, given your research, that could hook up with the attitude amongst your students that there's a need for a superseding European identity to transcend more parochial nationalistic identities? In terms of your dynamic systems modeling.
Interaction of different systems. I think that these identities will not disappear. These nationalistic type of identities that both Croats and Serbs have, but I think that they will become less relevant in this new regional setup. And also, I think that students are really sick of the past and of this recent past and how it's being used through public discourse to create divisions. And what their interest, or what they are really interested is new opportunities, because so many of Croatian and Serbian young people are leaving the country because there is no employment. There is, so it will become less relevant, but I don't think it will disappear. And this creation of this overarching European identity, it might take some time for this to gain traction. And I'm a little, if it weakens, if this European setup weakens, and if some changes happen, nationalist identities can emerge again. That's what I think, but hopefully it will not happen.
Now, was this perceived need for a superseding European identity equally distributed amongst the integrated and segregated schools, or were the integrated students more predisposed toward that attitude?
Yeah, integrated, in integrated schools.
So then that speaks to having more integrated.
Yes, and it's
classes.
like there is more agreement within that model on many issues.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I found those results very fascinating.
And I would say, based on the Romanian case, I think there'll be an acceleration of young people leaving once it's possible, or easier once they're in the EU and it's easier to move. And so what the Romanians have experienced is that the brightest of their young people have left, and acquired a European identity in Germany or France or the UK or Belgium or wherever. And so think of themselves as European, and the ones who weren't quite up to a European standard for employment possibilities, who stayed, became more Romanian because they felt excluded from Europe by their lack of employability in Germany or France or wherever, and so they fell back on their Romanian identity and strengthened it instead of, and so there's sort of these two groups now of young European Romanians and young Romanian Romanians, and they often don't even speak to one another because they have very different life trajectories.
Remarkable. Finally, Borislava, I'm intrigued by the fact that you are not just a dispassionate, objective researcher in this case. You are from the Serbian region of Croatia. You are a Croatian citizen of Serbian ethnicity. And it's remarkable that you were able to do the study and be a relatively dispassionate, objective, quote-unquote, observer. I'm curious, and I don't mean to be offensive, but to what were your family's experiences during Operation Storm in 1995?
So this region of Eastern Slavonia, where my family lives, it was not affected by, it was not directly affected by this operation, because this operation was directed against the Serbs in the western parts of Krajina, of Croatia.
Right.
But of course, everybody was indirectly affected, and not even directly, because my relatives from these regions actually came to our place, and they stayed for some time. Yeah, they stayed for some time there, and then they moved on. They're now actually here in the U.S., in Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they were given this opportunity. It was, it's a terrible event. It's like what for Palestinians, Nakba. That is for Serbs, this storm. Yeah. So
I appreciate
it has a very negative connotation.
You could very well have been one of the interviewees in the study had someone else done it.
But my view is that I want peace for that region, and I tried my best to be as objective as possible, because I would not do any good if my research is biased.
I know.
So
Well, you did remarkably well. I agree with both Mills and Karina. You did a fine, excellent, outstanding piece of work, as I've told you a few times. Okay, now for the rest of you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Borislava. It's so nice to hear you talk about your work and your journey and everything you're learning from it. And I really appreciate all you've done in looking at this agency structure dynamic in the systems model. I think that's really moving our field forward a little bit. I wanted to ask about two things. One is mixed identity. Where does mixed identity fit, if it does, in the region? Did it come up in the interviews? Is it something young students identify with, or do they very clearly not, they don't want to have a mixed identity if they have any roots that are mixed? And the second question is, systems theory also, sort of acknowledges that even though you're an outside researcher, you're part of the system. And so whatever you're doing is impacting and changing the system. And I wonder if you reflected through the process at all, or had experiences that made you think about how your research and your interviewing and what you were doing was impacting the system there. If there was anything that struck you about that.
Thank you. So mixed identities. There are many people in the region that are, from mixed marriages, or So I think they really serve as some kind of a bridge between these two different ethnicities, and they are the ones who are, I think, more open to these programs, and they are the ones who are working with these NGOs. But if you have such, I guess, a minority group of people and a specific group of people working on peace and reconciliation, we are living on the side this large number of people who are not interested to engage in these processes. So we really need to think about how to engage those others. While these people from mixed marriages are really the bridge, I think, and they are the ones who are pushing the processes of reconciliation forward. And the other question, the importance of my research, I definitely want to publish a book based on my dissertation, and I'm hoping that these processes of collaborative learning that I'm proposing and that I was experimenting with here at ESCAR with my PT class, actually, that they can. I mean, maybe I can propose that in these schools. I would be happy to really do some programs in that direction. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for your beautiful presentation and research. I'm aware that you're working with a beautiful project across the room on love and forgiveness. And it happened that I'm reading a book on political forgiveness.
Uh-huh.
And so given the complexity of the process of reconciliation and healing and forgiveness in the region, do you think you might think of introducing forgiveness to the school curriculum to help the kids integrate the past history with the reality that they're living in as they move forward to a reconciled or integrated region?
I think this is a very important question, and you as a Catholic priest yourself, I see the importance of forgiveness for yourself. But I think that forgiveness should be a big part of reconciliation processes. However, in Rwanda you have the gacaca courts, and you have these traditional ways of dealing with the past and enabling these forgiveness processes. In Croatia, unfortunately, we don't have these local kind of processes for these for kind of enabling forgiveness to take place. So so far, programs and projects are focusing on interaction, on engagement of students in learning together about history and other aspects, but forgiveness is important, but it's kind of missing from these processes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Dobar dan.
Dobar dan.
Dobro. I'm a guest here, obviously, and very much impressed with your work and your presentation. I worked in Bosnia for 4 years right after the war, and I'm struggling with, I hope it's a book, on the cultural aspects of the conflict. Culture includes a whole bunch of things, excludes a lot of things. In the segregated model that you looked at, did you touched on this with Professor Sandole's question, but do you see any race to play the greater victim, the accumulation of incidents to, in case the question came up of who caused this whole mess, to be able to say, well, they did it to us first, and here are the examples, going back as far in history as they choose to go. Was there a victimology theme that came to the surface in your work?
Definitely, yes. There was this narratives of victimhood. But what's interesting is that it was not one of the prevalent themes that occurred with students, and that really in the textbooks you have clearly these dichotomous narratives of we are the victims and they are the aggressors, with both Serbs and Croats. Going back to even to the Second World War and so on. So kind of time is when students speak about the past, about the recent past, they always connect it to the present, to their present condition, and to the orientation towards the future. And they go back, in the past. Serbs have this victimhood narrative of Jasenovac and this concentration camp in Croatia and their victimhood from the Second World War that is very relevant even nowadays, and they usually connect it with this war of 1991, that they feel as victims again. So it's like the history is repeating itself. While Croats also feel that they are victims because they always felt that they were under some kind of Serbian hegemony, and they always wanted to have an independent state, and they were always prevented by Serbs to have that state in a way. So they also feel that they were victims, especially in socialist Yugoslavia. They feel that they were victims, that their voice was not heard, that Serbs have the upper hand, and so on. So, yeah.
There was also Vukovar in 1991.
Yes. So, Vukovar was really like the biggest battle in the Croatian War, and many people were killed. It was like Stalingrad. The whole town was destroyed. And now, I mean, buildings are everything is rebuilt. But the connection, the relationships among people are still broken. So this is a big symbol of victimhood for Croatia. Yeah.
I think that is probably it. I thank Borislava and all of you.